Hi everybody, I'm Bill Brennan, welcoming you to another edition of Honolulu on the Move, the show that brings you the latest news and information about the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. Well, you know, construction crews returned to work last month, picking up where they left off a little more than a year ago when the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation temporarily halted construction work in Kapolei to comply with a Hawaii Supreme Court ruling. And now that we're back to construction, I have with me today two guests to talk about construction and the project moving forward. First of all, to my immediate left is Mr. Lance Wilhelm. He's the Senior Vice President for Kiewit Infrastructure West Company, the company charged with building our guideway, and thank you so much for being with us today, Lance.
Aloha.
And seated to Lance's left is the Executive Director and CEO of HART, Mr. Dan Grabowskis. Dan, good to have you back again.
Thanks, Bill.
Dan, why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about the history, about the year off that we took, and maybe more importantly, what HART staffers did to get us back to work.
Well, it was just a little over a year ago that as a result of a Supreme Court ruling, we had to halt construction, as you mentioned. The State Historic Preservation Office had given to the project a go-ahead permit based on the fact that archaeological inventory survey work had been completed in the first 10 miles of the project, and that's where we were going to work. So we did this survey work looking for Native Hawaiian burials, archaeological artifacts, completed reports, and then submitted them, and they were approved, and then that gave us the go-ahead. There was a challenge to the rule because some believed that we needed to do that for the full 20 miles, not just for the first 10, even though we were only going to start back at the beginning of the project. The Supreme Court agreed with that position, and so we halted construction and went back to a different kind of work, which was to do the archaeological inventory survey for the remaining 10 miles right into the city center. So we did that 2 months ahead of schedule, completed what turned out to be almost 8,500 pages of reporting, and then worked with the State Historic Preservation Division to review those reports and get them approved. So on August 29th, they approved those reports. We went back to the Honolulu City Council for some final permit approvals, and then we were able to very happily say to Lance and his wonderful team over at Kiewit, we're ready to go back to work. And on September 16th, last month, we were able to put men and women back to work and get this project going again.
That could not have been a good a year for the folks who work for you, Lance. Can you kind of describe the mood and what you went through and now how it feels to get back to work?
Yeah, tough. Those of us in the construction business, we don't get into this line of work because we like going to meetings or sitting around offices, and generally we get in this line of work because we like building stuff and getting outside and getting to the work, and we had just started doing that when the suspension kind of hit us both. So over that period of time, we worked with Dan and the HART team and tried to figure out the least cost options in terms of what to do with our resources. And it was a challenge because we couldn't necessarily know ahead of time how long the suspension would be. In some circumstances, as an example, we have specialized pieces of equipment that if you knew you were only going to be down for 3 months, you'd wait. If you thought it was going to be a year, you might ship off and then remobilize. And we weighed those different elements for pretty much all the equipment we have and all the resources that we have, coming up with what we thought was the best solution. Many of our men and women, particularly the craftsmen and women that are out in the field working, some of those people we had to lay off, at least temporarily. We've laid off some of our full-time staff. We had to relocate some of the staff to the mainland. Some of those guys will come back, some of them won't be back. So it was a tough time. Getting the word that we could go back to work fired everybody back up again. Very excited to get back there, mobilizing our people and equipment, and firing it all back up again. Yeah, so we're happy to be here.
Can we make up for lost time with the year off? I mean, is that? I mean, you think you're off for a year. How can we get that back? Is that something we can do? I mean, I know we don't want to be reckless about it or go full bore from the outset, but how do you go about kind of making up for the year off?
A couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, our contracts with HART is just the first half, so that's only 10 miles of the full 20-mile program. And Dan can certainly speak to how this suspension might have impacted the overall program. With regards to our work, initially our plans were to be a little bit more linear in nature, that is kind of starting in one end, working all the way through, and through some discussions with HARD and way that we can be more efficient, we're probably going to be a little bit more concurrent in some of our work, work in more places at one time, maybe bring on a few more resources and stack ourselves up a little bit to try to truncate the overall period of time. A little more challenging, and creates a little bit more work along the corridor at any point in time than we might have otherwise been. But we think we can really help the schedule get a little bit shorter.
Dan, same question. Can we make up for some of this lost time?
Not some, but not all.
Right.
And I think that's really the message that Lance is saying as well. I mean, there is only so much that can be done. You want to limit the disruptions to traffic, for instance, because we are going to be building a lot of this in the center median of busy roadways. Ultimately, however, we took, I think, a good use of this past year to try to be creative with some of the things that we were going to do. So one of the most important things that I can say to the public is that we actually are going to still open the full 20 miles in 2019 as had been planned. And that's really due to a lot of hard work that Kiewit's doing today, and some hard work that our folks did in terms of planning, so that we can make that deadline. So people are going to see an awful lot of activity, which we're happy about, a lot of people back to work. And then ultimately, though, we'll see this open in 2019. That's on time.
Are there some positives for having taken the year off? Are we a little more focused in the work that needs to be done? Are there positives that have come from the year-long delay?
I mean, I'll say just generally in terms of on behalf of the project, yeah, we made good use of this past year. We made good use of it in a couple ways. One is that the project hadn't yet gained full access to a number of different areas where we want Kiewit to do their work. And so we had negotiations with state agencies, federal government agencies, with private landowners. And we made a list, and we said we want to get through all of this in the next year so that they're unimpeded, and also we're setting ourselves up well for the next 10 miles and all the station construction. So we did all that. I think we also did learn some things about how we can work together, both Kiewit and HART. And also the other partner in this, very important, is Ansaldo, who is going to build the rail cars and also ultimately operate and maintain the whole system. And so I think we took good use of this past year to get better integration. So I think we're better prepared today than we would have been a year ago to proceed. And if everything else we've done comes to fruition, as I hope it will, we still end in 2019. So I think we're going to be smarter as well as working harder.
Lance?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, you know, keeping in mind that we have a design-build contract, and so we have responsibility to both complete the design and do the construction in the field. And that suspension period allowed us to work on our design a little bit. It didn't prevent us from doing that part. The design takes a tremendous amount of coordination, not just with HART, Ansaldo as a partner, but every other agency that we have to interface with, the Department of Transportation, private utilities, HECO and whatnot. And so the time that it took to get all those agreements done and interfaces worked out and the design finalized, I think will make us much more efficient going forward and much surer of ourselves. And that means less backtracking, less slowdowns, much faster work in the field.
Dan had mentioned that a lot of the work will be done in the medians of roadways and state highways and the like. And I know safety is, of course, always top priority for any sort of construction project, and especially this one, because we'll be out there for several years running and a lot of people working. Tell me about safety and your workers and what Kiewit does to promote safety in the field.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. You know, as we look at our project here and we analyze what our greatest risks are to the project, certainly the work that we're going to be doing in the roadways of Honolulu, Kamehameha Highway, Farrington, side streets, etc., represent one of the bigger risks, possibly the biggest risk to our project. You know, Kiewit does a lot of this kind of work out in the freeways rehabilitation and whatnot. And when you think about the fact that really the only thing separating one of our guys from a car traveling 45 miles an hour is an orange cone, a little more than that, it's you know, a little bit scary out there, and so we try to do all of our part in terms of preparing our traffic control plans, preparing our maintenance of traffic plans, as well as communicating to our people, to our craft people and the people on our side, where to be, where not to be in traffic, etc. We want to make a really a plea to the public and take every opportunity we can to talk to them about, just keep an eye out for our guys. The guys out doing the work in the field are your uncles or your brothers or your cousins. They're out there coming to work every day with every expectation of going home to their families at night. And it's my job and everybody's job at Kiewit, as well as Hartz, to make sure that that happens. You know, we have the luxury to kind of do our jobs in offices, and we don't worry that much about whether or not we'll make it home at night. And I expect our guys who work in the field to have the same feeling.
Yes.
They should have every expectation that they go home at night to their families, and their families are at home waiting for them. Our motto is very simple: nobody gets hurt. Our motto at Kiewit is nobody gets hurt.
I've seen that on the back of the vests that the
Yeah.
guys wear. Yeah.
And we mean that, and
Yeah.
that means no scratches, no bumps, no bruises, and certainly nothing worse than that.
Right.
And we work very hard at creating work plans that allow for the safe execution of our project. We know what we do. It's inherently dangerous. We have big equipment, moving lots of heavy stuff around in some pretty small areas, but we're confident we can do it safely. And one of the unique features of our safety program is that we empower every man, from an apprentice carpenter to the most experienced foreman. If you see something funny, out of whack, you don't feel comfortable, you have the right and the authority and the responsibility to stop the work until you get yourself comfortable. And we preach it and we preach it and we mean it, and we expect our people to do it. And that culture of making sure that we take care of each other as well as ourselves, we hope will carry the day for us. But we really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, because it's important, really important, that the traveling public, when they see us out there, see an orange sign. I know it's very easy to get used to it, especially on our roads here in Honolulu. Seems like there's a traffic going every place, and signs saying road work ahead. But when you see that, please, you know, back off a little bit, drive with aloha. Remember, that's your cousins out there working, and that's all family.
All right. Thanks for that, Lance. I appreciate it. And Dan, of course, at heart, our motto includes the word safely, right? I mean, we're as aware of the need for safe construction and a safe project as Kiewit is.
Well, you know, people have heard me, and you know, our board of directors talk about on time and on budget, and we've added to that to emphasize that within our own culture, safely, on time and on budget. And I couldn't say it better than Lance. We all hope, every one of us, that we send folks home to their families and to their homes, not to a hospital.
Right.
And so it's important to have that kind of a culture, and to support that. Each person in the field has that ability to recognize a potential problem and halt before something happens.
Right.
Prevention is really what we're really talking about here.
Right. So, construction-wise, then, where are we now? What are we seeing? What locations are we at? And what's happening out there in the field since we've resumed construction?
I'll take a crack at the play-by-play a little bit.
Okay.
So we'll start way out on the west side, up along North-South Road in the farm fields up there. We're doing our drilling operations in terms of building foundation work. Very simple operation. A lot of engineering goes into it, but at the end, you know, really what it boils down to is we drill a foundation hole, we put a rebar cage in it, fill it full of concrete. Then our column crew follows behind that to build the columns up above that. That is happening currently closer to Fort Weaver Road, a little bit closer to the Waipahu end. In Farrington Highway and in Kamehameha Highway, our utility crews are out there doing the relocations. Some of them are temporary relocations in terms of creating space for our boring and operation to do ground testing. Some of it is permanent relocation, as in the case near Kahimohala currently, where we're moving a 30-inch water line to make space for the columns. And then down at the far end near the Aloha Stadium, we're doing our test drilling program for the foundations in that area. So, you know, the geological conditions vary greatly from Eva Beach towards the stadium, and so our foundations are designed slightly differently, and so we have to have a test program in every area to make sure that our design works in each spot, and so that's kind of what we're doing out there. Going into the end of the year and then into next year, we're going to start moving our column operation into Farrington Highway, so we'll be more in Waipahu Center, doing foundations and columns, as well as we'll start pouring our precast segments for the actual guideway itself in the January-February timeframe. We have a precast yard operation out in Campo Industrial Park.
Right.
And so what they have to do is they cast the 10-foot segments that will eventually build the guideway itself. Right. And erection for that is scheduled for later on in 2014. But in order to create enough segments for us to get out in front of that, we have to start casting in January, February timeframe. So we'll start working on that, and that'll be a big operation as well. A lot of men and women working out there. And then eventually, later on in 2014, start the actual erection of the guideway on top of all these columns.
Right.
So people are going to see a lot of columns for a while. In order to do that, they'll see some traffic movement, particularly with regards to utility work. And then later on in 2014, they start seeing some guideway operations.
Do you put up all the columns first and then come behind with the precast segments?
They won't all be done.
Right.
We need to create enough space so that our guideway operation and the erection can be efficient, and we can set those fairly quickly. And so we have to have a number of columns out in front of us first. But at some point along the line, we'll be doing foundations, columns, and erection kind of at the same time,
right.
just in different spots in the alignment.
We're also out at the what we refer to as the Maintenance and Storage Facility, MSF.
So there's a lot of activity there. People, I think you may have some pictures throughout this show to show a little bit of the work, but Lance can talk more in detail. But one thing that you may not see is next to Leeward Community College, we have our Maintenance and Storage Facility, 43 acres, big site, that's being completely regraded to allow it to be leveled for all of the tracks. This is where the trains will come in at night to sleep, to be cleaned, repaired, and the Operation Control Center will also be at that location. So actually I've seen some of the photographs already just in the last couple of days, and there's a ton of work happening out there. I mean, it's extraordinary how quickly they're actually changing the topography of the land to get ready.
And what's going to be there? What is the Maintenance and Storage?
So as I say, it's where the train, Don Horner, one of our board members, likes to say it's the brains in the trains.
Right.
So the brains part is it's the Operation Control Center. People, again, will recall we're going to have the first driverless system, fully automated, and will be fully operated from this one location. So we're going to have our Operation Control Center. Then we'll have the maintenance facility, and there'll be buildings for wheel truing, which is to actually take the steel wheels and resharpen them, if you want to think of it that way, or reform them so that they match the railhead and have a nice tight fit so there's no noise and very efficient movement of the trains. Then there are facilities to bring the trains in so that they can be washed on the exterior, and then the people can get inside and wash on the interior. And then there are maintenance bays as well, so the trains can be pulled in and literally be raised. People can get underneath there and work on the trucks and the propulsion systems and other things. And so all that happens at that 43-acre site, and then the trains pull out in the morning, and we'll be operating, from 4 o'clock in the morning till midnight.
Right.
And so even though that's when people will see a lot of activity, or the activity on the guideway, it'll be pretty much 24/7 at the maintenance and storage facility.
Yes. What else has been going on with the project other than the move to get back to construction and working with Kiewit on how best to do that? I know we've been busy with, we've been out in the community with some station design workshops, and we have more of those coming up this month in October and November going forward. Can you tell us what else is happening at Hart?
Well, yeah, a lot. I mean, we never stop working, and
Right.
that's an important message.
Yes.
And Kiewit never stopped working other than on construction, because the design of this is pretty complicated, and so we've also been doing design work on stations. I think just in the last, few months, we've had 2 different presentations to the public, or 1 representation to the public of 5 different stations. and we're setting ourselves up so that we'll be able to go back out to the community and ultimately package the first 9 stations to go out to bid for actual construction next year.
Wow.
So, meanwhile, we've unveiled the train, what
Yes.
it's going to look like. So we've been designing the train, some of the components and some of the systems that will be associated with the train, and doing an awful lot really to of what maybe you call behind the scenes, which isn't quite as apparent, but it's really necessary before we can move forward.
Right. 2014, through the end of this year, 2013, and 2014 sounds like a very busy year on a lot of fronts. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Am I reading that right?
Yeah, for us, we are back to work, but like any good sports team that had the off season, right? It takes a little while
Yes.
for you to work the rust off of it, and
Right.
so we've asked our guys not to go out there and try to set records in the first few weeks of construction. That's how guys get hurt, and that's how mistakes get made, and so we're allowing for a wrap-up period. And there's still more guys we need to bring on board, and we couldn't get everybody back all at once. We couldn't get all the equipment back all at once, so it's going to take some time. So we look at really between now and the end of the year as being that steady
I
ramp-up
see.
period, and we're gonna do a lot of work. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
but once we turn to 2014 and we start casting segments in the precast jar and the column operation gets to be more rhythmic, the work gets to be a little more linear, we'll be a lot more efficient. So we're going to be quite a bit busier over the course of 2014. That's kind of an understatement, I think.
Yes.
And then I know Dan has other plans for the rest of the program.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, in 2014, we'll be putting out for bid the next 10 miles or the final 10 miles of
Right.
the project, which is going to be another huge contract. As I mentioned, the first 9 stations are going to go out in 2014, probably in the summertime, if I remember correctly, and then later in the year, the next 4 stations after that, and then it'll be, I think in 2015, we'll put out the final package for the stations coming into the city center. But it's there's a lot of work. It's going to be really busy right up through 2019.
Yes.
And us getting our first passenger, not just in 2017, the 10 miles, but people keep hearing us talk about those 2 dates. The interim opening is something we opted to do. We didn't have to open the full
Right.
the first 10 miles. Some people say, well, you're not going to have a lot of ridership, but there are going to be a lot of benefits to sort of having what in the retail business they call a soft opening. Make sure you get everything worked out properly. We'll still carry revenue passengers, and it will still be safe, and it'll be efficient, and it'll be on time. But that'll really set us up very well, I think, to open the full 20 miles with all the kinks and bugs worked out of any new system.
Right. What Dan would you like the public to know about this next year in construction? I know we've talked about safety of the workers and stuff, but too, we will be inconveniencing from time to time motorists and residents, and what's the message you would like them to keep in mind as we move forward?
That we're going to be out there communicating with you, with our partners at Kiewit, with the businesses who want to stay in business and keep the public knowing that they are in business, even though there may be some cones that'll be in front of their store.
Right.
We know that there'll be school kids, and that there'll be our kupuna, and that there'll be people driving, and that they're going to want to get to work on time. And so we need to really focus on traffic and how we're going to impact that. And so what people, I think, really have to know is we're focused, even just to, on a regular daily, weekly basis, we're talking about how we coordinate with HDOT and with the city and county and private work as well as our work to make sure that we really focus on safety, not just for our employees, but safety for the motoring public. And that the best thing we can do is to communicate, arm you with the information so you can make the decision about how you want to travel so that you can minimize any delays. And so if people are armed with information, they can plan, and if they can plan, they can manage.
Right.
And I think, as you saw in the first few days of the work of the closure of H1 last month, I think HDOT did a very good job informing the public about
Yes.
those complete closures, and it looked like it went pretty well.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry we're out of time, but I really appreciate both of you taking your time to talk to the public about the construction and the rail project moving forward. And as Dan mentioned, we try to keep you informed through several venues so that you know what the latest is about the project and how you might adjust your schedule during this construction period. And here's a few ways we do that. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on our next Honolulu on the Move show, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, just two of the places where you can stay informed with up-to-date information on the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. And you can view our latest project videos on YouTube or Vimeo. If you'd like more information on the project or would like a presentation to your group or organization, give us a call at our project hotline at 566-2299. Or contact us via our website at honolulutransit.org. By the way, we've redesigned our project website. Visitors to honolulutransit.org will find it a more colorful, interactive, and user-friendly site. You'll be able to keep up with the latest news and information about the project, important meeting dates, times, and locations, and examine the official documents that are guiding the project's planning and construction. Take some time to visit the new and improved honolulutransit.org. And don't forget that you can also join us here every Sunday night at 4:30 p.m. on Olelo Channel 54. On behalf of all of us on the project team, mahalo for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time for another edition of Honolulu on the Move.